everyone. Hello and welcome back again on importof.com. Today we are back again with an inspiring new research story. Professor Tejpavan Gandhok. He's a clinical assistant professor at Indian School of Business of Strategy and Entrepreneurship. So thank you so much, Professor, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
So you being an entrepreneur as well as a professor, so please share your research journey so far in this area of strategy and entrepreneurship.
Okay. So let me just give you a context of my career journey and then the research journey as a subset of that. So my career has spanned many geographies and many careers. I basically started off as a research scientist, then moving into corporate roles, and post my MBA, I basically started off working in strategy consulting firms, made senior partner fairly quickly. So I had a long career as a senior partner in strategy consulting, then as a partner in private equity funds, then serial entrepreneurship. Had a few lucky exits, and so chose to do basically whatever I feel like. And as part of that freedom of pursuing my interests, I chose to pursue what I like to call a Pracademic career. And in that, I basically divide half my time notionally between my entrepreneurial and investment interests, and the other notion half my time in my academic interests. And that research journey, in a sense, began in about 2012, where I went and did an executive Ph.D. at Singapore Management University, and continues from there on to my sort of current role at ISB. And my research interests are basically essentially interested in the underpinnings of strategy formulation and strategic thinking, and especially the role of subconscious processes.
How do you inculcate your professional experience, corporate experience into your research as well as classroom teaching?
Right. So I think that's a very interesting question. This basically that I think manifests itself in two things. One, in my areas of research, I'm much more interested in impact, and therefore looking at questions that are much more interesting. And I actually personally find that the conventional trade-off that many academics get bogged down between rigor and relevance is quite irrelevant or unnecessary. There are many opportunities and avenues where you can achieve both rigor and relevance. So I choose to try and find topics and questions that are interesting from that point of view. I also choose my research styles as well as output that would have an impact for users like myself, in the sense of senior corporate decision makers, as opposed to purely publication in narrow journals. So that's how it influences my research. As far as it influencing my teaching, I very firmly believe that the sorts of topics that I'm interested in can't be taught, but people can learn. So therefore, I'm very interested in looking at ways and techniques where it is not a classroom experience, but how do we bring in much more experiential, much more learning journeys for the participants. So those are the two main focuses.
Very interesting case study you created in 2016 with the title, "Does Facebook acquisition of WhatsApp for $19 billion creates value for its shareholders?" So please share your views from the founder's perspective as well as from the investor's perspective.
Right. So you're looking for the actual answers to the case, or you're looking for the issues that the case uncovers?
So it depends on you how much you want.
Yeah, I would prefer not to give the actual answers to the case. Let me unfold some of the issues that the case tries to get people to learn. First of all, this was a case that, and this issue that attracted a lot of attention, 5-6 years ago at the time of the acquisition. Everybody was perplexed and really asked this question, whether how can WhatsApp be worth so much money, given that it, at that point in time, and to a reasonably large extent, even now, it doesn't actually generate any, and it doesn't really have a monetization phase. The interesting point is that subsequently, that $19 billion almost became the de facto benchmark. And almost every so-called, unicorn or tech company valuation, particularly when it's gone to IPO or has had a major strategic acquisition, at least in the US, this 19 billion has become the benchmark. And everything is being north of that. So LinkedIn got bought by Microsoft for 23 billion, Snapchat got IPO'd for 19, 20 billion. So the point is, initially people were perplexed by this amount of valuation. Subsequently, लोगों ने इसका सवाल ही पूछना छोड़ दिया, and then it's become the default, and everybody just accepts that. But if you still ask, even 5-6 years down the track, very few people are able to point to whether this valuation makes sense or not, or what would be. So essentially, the issues that this case tries to uncover is, first of all, it tries to actually show with some simple heuristics and mental models, if you have the right value creation frameworks, such as the rule of 72, looking at doubling and getting people to understand and appreciate that the net present value question can be boiled down to as simple as, are you doubling investors' money fast enough? So in other words, the 19 billion has to become 38 billion in value at some point in time, depending on what fast enough means. In other words, what is the hurdle rate or the opportunities. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is, a key learning is to be able to understand that how can something be of value even if it's not in monetization, and even if it is not likely to be monetized ever. So how can assets be of value to acquirers even if those assets individually don't generate cash flow ever, but if they can help protect the moat of the acquirer or help the acquirer generate more cash flow from other sources by preventing that asset to be in the hands of some other potential competitor. And that essentially is the trick and the key learning to be derived from a discussion such as this. And essentially integrating and driving home the key learning of joining the dots between strategy, business model, and valuation or value creation.
So sir, our viewers are students, faculty, researchers working in different domains. What message you would like to give to our audience to do path-breaking research, innovations, or in entrepreneur sector?
I think if we just focus on the research question, I think my personal perspective has been that I choose to work on research that has an impact. I think a lot of conventional research, particularly for the tenure track faculty, is guided towards publications. So perhaps my comments or advice are not really relevant or aimed at that segment, because I don't understand that particular path terribly well. But my interest is in impact. And to my mind, impact has to be much more than just publication. It has to be how many people have understood it, read it. Obviously, to do that, they have to have become aware of it, and then more importantly, enact. So I would say take a broader view of what your impact can be, and accordingly then start to think about what your research outputs might be. So for example, I am much more interested, because I'm much more interested in impact with this TG of entrepreneurs or corporate decision makers. I'm therefore much more interested in applied research outputs, such as how can they be made to think differently or enhance their complex problem solving or strategic decision making abilities. I'm very interested therefore in immersive learning experiences, such as the kind of simulation that you have experienced. I'm much more interested in real life cases and case studies where there's lots of nuances, but lots of big dollar signs, and that's why I'm very interested in big valuation, how do you make sense of these things? How is it that how is it that we can reach fairly quickly, if we have the right mental models and frameworks, to say, yeah, look, the $19 billion in the case of Facebook, maybe it's not so ludicrous, but then when we can start to apply those similar lenses to an Uber or a WeWorks, we can start to see why there are more questions than answers, so to speak, and not just because that's popular public perception, but by using the right mental models and being able to look at it. So I would sort of say, if we make that impact our primary measure rather than purely publications, then these kinds of outputs are also become interesting and relevant. So that's the kind of journey that I'm on.
It was amazing, sir. Completely amazing.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Professor.
Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.